everyone, welcome to Pearls of Eden. Today we're going to talk about Corey Feldman, Ali Carter, Jaguar Wright, and all of these men and women. What do they have in common? Well, they've been sounding the alarm. They've been sharing their story for a very long time, especially Corey Feldman. He has been sounding the alarm on the pedophilia that goes on in Hollywood for at least 15 to 20 years. Yet people labeled him as crazy, conspiracy theorist, bitter. He was just out here doing the most, right? Because that's what they do. When you want to tell your story and you want to tell the truth of what really is happening, they label you as so many things to discredit you. So I wanted to actually share his story because surprisingly, many people don't know who Corey Feldman is, and he's a child star of the 80s. He grew up doing movies like Bad News Bears, The Goonies. How many of you remember The Goonies? He was the 80s star. He was everywhere. And sadly, he was also a child star victim. So I want to share his story because many people, they don't even know. It's kind of like the Shirley Temple clip that I showed. People were surprised that, people have been sounding the alarm on Hollywood for so long, but it's just that we're in the era of truth where the stage is set. It's time for the P. Diddy's of the world. It's time for the Epsteins. It's time for the Harvey Weinsteins, and truly so many more that are still hidden to be exposed. So without further ado, we're going to take a look at Ali Carter first, because many people don't even know who she is, but she is a victim of elite human sex trafficking. She's been sounding the alarm in these streets for a moment, and she's sharing her story. So for those of you who are new to Ali Carter, I want to bring awareness to who she is. So take a listen.
So you guys know that this is not easy. When you are holding the truth of crimes against humanity, there's no money that you could be taken in for this. It's not happening. When you start trading money for the truth, you are no better than the slave traders. Okay? Because again, you're pimping yourself or you're selling yourself. We're not doing that. We're just not doing that. We collect cans. We sometimes do secret shopper. That's how we keep moving. Okay? And there's people who are like, well, how do you sleep in the car? This car? Okay? But besides that, when you are standing in this truth, we get held 24/7, stuff that y'all don't even see. Okay? And when you understand the level of hell that you're getting, when you see the enemies, the problems that come with speaking out, two wrongs don't make a right. So slamming some survivors together to say, hey, you guys are both speaking on the same thing. Can y'all speak together? Do you see us endorse anybody? Do you see us team up with anybody? When do you see us post stuff on other people? We don't know them. We will let you know, hey, this person is speaking the truth. But if we see something, we'll back up and throw it in six so quick. There are survivors who are like, hey, can you team up with this person? She's speaking out. Can you team up with this person? She's speaking out. We see a problem. And on top of that, we don't want to intermingle demons. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally can understand what Ali is saying. A lot of people say, why don't you get with this truth teller? Why doesn't this truth teller, they get together, do a collaboration, and just break all the system all the way down? And you have to be wise because everybody's carrying their own issues. And when you intermingle, not only do you catch what they've got, you've got what you're dealing with already, and it can equal a catastrophe. And so that is wisdom that Ali is using, that she doesn't really know who these people are, who they're connected to. And that could be dangerous for her, who's out here in these streets fighting to survive, to stay alive, right? This isn't entertainment for them.
Corey Feldman has no idea what it's like not to be famous. He was just 3 years old in this McDonald's commercial.
McDonald's gift certificates.
I literally was famous before I knew my own name.
His roles defined the 80s. Goonies.
This was my dream, my wish.
Stand By Me.
You call my dad a loony again, and I'll kill you.
License to Drive.
The only difference between you and that greaseball is that he has a license and you don't.
films that propelled him into the spotlight for his entire youth. But being famous so young, he says, caused serious damage to him and his friends. Do you feel like you missed out on a normal childhood?
What childhood? I don't know what that means.
I think that's so sad because we've talked about this before on this channel. Child stars who, they lose everything. They lose their childhood, their sanity, all for fame and fortune because their parents, they want to be famous. And they push them out here in these Hollywood streets. They pimp them in so many ways. Some knowingly, some out of ignorance. But at what point do you wake up and you say, something's not right here? And so you just feel so bad for stars like Corey Feldman and Corey Haim, rest in peace, and people like Justin Bieber, even the last, what's the young man that died from New Direction, Lim? I mean, all of these people are just, they're just so stripped, right? They're just so vulnerable. They're so broken in their spirit. Britney Spears, and the list goes on and on, right? Of these child stars, Orlando Brown, who, if they make it to adulthood, they're severely damaged. It's unfortunate.
A lost childhood and a loss of innocence. He blames the adults, not just those looking to profit from charming children, but also some with far more sinister motives.
I can tell you that the number one problem in Hollywood was and is and always will be pedophilia. That's the biggest problem for children in this industry.
The casting couch even applies to children.
Oh yeah. Not in the same way. It's all done under the radar.
Nobody talks about pedophilia.
It's the big secret.
And it's widespread?
Oh yeah. I was surrounded by them when I was 14 years old. Surrounded. Literally. Didn't even know it. It wasn't until I was old enough to realize what they were and what they wanted and what they were about and the types of people that were surrounding me till I went, oh my God, they were everywhere like vultures.
Vultures. That's an interesting terminology and most accurate to describe these people who are so wicked that feed off of the energy of these children. And as Corey Feldman said, he was surrounded by them. It wasn't like an isolated incident. No, this was what comprised Hollywood. And this is what he had to contend and fight against. And it is amazing. It is nothing but God that has kept him in his right mind to be able to come and share these truths. Anybody else, like he said, many of the people that he was connected with are dead via drugs and alcohol and so many things that have just robbed them of life.
Vultures who Feldman says abused him and his best friend, the late child actor Corey Haim, his co-star in The Lost Boys.
Well, what happens if my mom is dating the head vampire?
Feldman says the trauma of that pedophilia contributed to Haim's death.
There's one person to blame in the death of Corey Haim, and that person happens to be a Hollywood mogul. And that person needs to be exposed, but unfortunately I can't be the one to do it. But the person that knows who did it and knows who he is watching right now, I guarantee you. Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
Again, he has to be very careful how he moves with this type of information because no one person contains all of the truths. And so you have to use wisdom in how you share what you know. And of course, he could go out here and he could tell you all of these big names, all of these elite moguls, all of these politicians out. They could say it. They could tell you all of it. But again, they have to be wise with the information that they have because it can disappear just like that. You all see with even the internet, with Google, they sanitize it. They go in and one moment you can find something and then you're like, where is it? And this is why everybody's screen recording, everybody's keeping their own documents, their own insurance, because the way these YouTube internet streets are set up, they can sanitize it just like that and remove anything that they want to remove. They can take records. You can go to court and they can seal these things where you can never access them again, right? So they have to tread lightly. They have to tread carefully. They've got to use wisdom because they're up against a system, you all, that The people that are in these evil pedophile rings are people that you see every day in the political square. Every day you see them in the movies, on the leading talk shows. And they're at the top, what you see. But the system is infiltrated all throughout the police system, the court system, from the bottom to the top. It's compromised.
It was a circle of older men that surrounded themselves around this group of kids. And they all had either their own power or connections to great power in the entertainment industry.
Feldman won't name names. And he admits his friend had a struggle with addiction, which he says was a mechanism to cope with his demons. It was a symptom.
It was a symptom, correct.
Are we in it?
In 2008, the two Coreys confronted each other on their reality show about the dark past they shared.
You let me get around in my life, man, raped, so to speak, when I was about 14 and a half, and I'm saying this right now. What'd you do, man, when you saw that going down when I was 14 to me? What'd you do? You knew about it.
You want to talk about the truth? Okay, well then let's talk about the truth. I was being molested at the same time by somebody else. What'd you do?
It's really sad because they do tell you the truth in plain sight. They say it through their music. They say it on these shows. They come out, and some of the celebrities, they just blatantly tell you this is what happens. But because they've been through so much, and a lot of times they're on drugs, they're on psychiatrics, they're on all these type of medications and things that make you loopy because they're trying to cope. Well, people just totally discredit them and say, well, oh, they're just an alcoholic. Oh, they're just a drug head. Oh, they are just out of their mind. You can't trust or believe them. So they try to wacko jack you. They try to Kanye West you. They try to, make people think that you are just absolutely crazy for the things that you are sharing so that they can discredit you. But the people have been sounding the alarm for so many years. Corey Feldman, he's been true to the game. He's not new to this. So he's been laying the foundation, as has so many of truth tellers. And this is why you're seeing the collapse of Hollywood. You're seeing the script unfold. You're seeing the walls come crumbling down because the gig is up, you all. And wow. Like I said, y'all hadn't seen nothing yet. Keep watching.
There's a lot of good people in this industry, but there's also a lot of really, really sick, corrupt people in this industry. And there are people in this industry who have gotten away with it for so long that they feel they're above the law. And that's got to change. That's got to stop.
We contacted Corey Haim's mother. In an email, she said, "I'm not willing to discuss or respond to anything Corey Feldman has to say. I wish he would talk about himself only and leave my son out of it."
Is there a dark side to child stardom?
Definitely. I think a lot of kids don't really want to do it. I think that the parents want to do it more than the kids.
Chris Snyder says for most child stars, it's the parents that can cause more damage. And he would know, having managed with his late boss Iris Burton some of the most iconic child stars, including Feldman, River Phoenix, and Drew Barrymore.
The biggest problem in the whole thing is when the parents start to live through the kids and quit their jobs and buy expensive houses, buy expensive cars, and the parents aren't understanding it's not going to go on forever, and it just wrecks everything.
Feldman's parents managed his career until the money came between them.
I got legally emancipated by going to the Producer's Pension Health and Welfare Plan myself at 14 years old and saying, what were my earnings and what's left? Earnings, by the time I was 13 years old, $1 million, which is really not that much money, but in those days it was. In the late 70s, early 80s, that was a good chunk of change.
And how much was left?
$40,000. And guess what? When I went in for the emancipation trial, my father said, since I spent my time with you on your last film and took it away from my office where I should have been focused, instead, I'm going to ask you for that $40,000 back as repayment for the money that I lost in my business.
You had to pay your dad?
Correct. You can check the court filings. That was a fact.
Wow.
So I started at zero at 15 years old, coming out of the hole.
We asked the court for the records, but they're sealed. In a statement, Corey's father, Bob Feldman, told us any money that the court awarded is a fraction of his claim. And this was a reimbursement for strictly professional expenses. For instance, private school, a publicist, professional wardrobe, traveling expenses, and lots more. This helped to save his career while he was in trouble with drug problems. I thought I was doing the best for my son, and I am always here for him. Child stardom is not a dream Feldman has for his own son.
I'll see you in a minute.
He is, after all, one of the few stars who doesn't let his child get photographed on the red carpet.
Would you ever put your own kid into the industry?
No, absolutely not.
Never?
Never. I believe that everybody in this world should have the freedom of choice.
And child stars don't?
Child stars have nothing. They have nothing. They have no choice. I was never taught how to have a family. I was never taught how to raise a child because I wasn't raised properly. I was never taught how to care for somebody because I was never shown genuine love. I was shown business. This is what you do. Here's how you read a contract. I knew how to read a contract by 10 years old, but I didn't know what it meant for somebody to come in and tell me they love me and kiss me goodnight. That's a problem.
The scripture that comes to mind is, what does it cost a man to gain the world and lose his soul? And when you see these stories over and over played out, it's like, why would anybody want to be a part of Hollywood? Why would you want to especially put your children in it? Because, you know, we're learning that the casting couch isn't even for these adults who, you know, sell their bodies, their spirits, their souls, you know, in order to elevate in the game of Hollywood. They come after the children, and it's so sad because, you know, going in, many of these parents aren't aware of that. They just think that, hey, my child has some talent, you know, and they have this dream of, you know, having fame and fortune, and they don't know that the cost that comes from the enemy's camp will rob you of everything. You know, we want to get our blessings from God. The Bible says the blessings of the Lord make one rich and addeth no sorrow. But the enemy doesn't play fair. The enemy will give you everything you desire, but it's going to cost you your soul. And if you manage to get out the brokenness, it's very sad, very, very sad. I don't know about you, but I want to get my wealth and my riches from the Most High God, because he promises that it will come with blessings and no sorrow. Okay? There's nothing wrong with prospering. There's nothing wrong with having wealth, but you do want to know it matters how you gain that wealth, how you get it. And are there good people in Hollywood that produce films? I'm sure, yeah, there's always a remnant, right? But what Hollywood is mostly comprised of, it's just wicked.
Nobody's going to be responsible for you except for you. But we're also not responsible for anything other than our own actions and reactions. We're not responsible for what somebody else decides to do with a situation. If we bring something up and they go haywire, that's not your responsibility. But it is your responsibility if you're purposely triggering them, if you're purposely pushing a button, if you're purposely doing it to get that reaction. So it's a fine line.
All right, this next clip that I pulled for you all comes from Mayim Balik. Many of you know her as Blossom. I grew up watching Blossom, and I love that show. But she has her own podcast. Many people don't know it, but she's quite brilliant. She is actually a neuroscientist. She's written plenty of books, so she's actually quite brilliant. And she seemed to have made it out of Hollywood unscathed, if that were ever possible. But this is her podcast that she had Corey Feldman on recently. And so I thought I would share it with you all. So let's take a listen at the updated version of Corey Feldman.
But that said, I do regret the fact that I didn't have a normal life or the option to have a normal life. Mm-hmm. You know, the problem is that when you work so young and your life is dedicated to the point where you're already kind of seen as famous before you're even famous, before you even know what that is, before you know what your own name or worth or value as a human is. The problem with that is you can't get fame and then decide, okay, now I don't want it anymore. It doesn't work that way because now people point and laugh at you. People look down at you because there's this like natural thing that goes on with people. They go, oh, you're working at Blockbuster now and you used to be famous, loser.
Right.
And you're disregarded as like a loss. Like your life is over. You're worthless. And that's the guilt that's put, that's the guilt that's put on top of you the second you walk out of that hit show or the second you walk away from that, series of films or whatever it is.
Right.
So you can't just stop. You'd like to stop, but you can't stop because if you don't, then you get this bullying that happens from the world at large that, oh, well, you're no good anymore. Sorry, I guess you just blew it. You're over with. And so I couldn't let that happen.
Right.
And so I kept working and I kept working and I kept working. And here we are 50 years later and I'm still freaking working.
So did you go to public school? Were you kind of homeschooled and schooled on sets? Like, I'm just kind of curious what your peer life was like because our peers are usually adults on sets. Like, that's kind of what it's like to be a kid. But did you have other like school experiences?
I did, and they weren't pleasant.
Right.
Because when you're the kid that's leaving all the time, they think, oh, you think you're special.
That's right.
You think you're something special, so we can pick on you because you're not even ever here, and you get to leave early, and you get to not be here half the time, and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And they don't realize that I don't want to go. It's not me doing it. It's my mom and dad making me do it, and this isn't my choice. This is my parents' choice. And you know what I mean? Like, they don't get it.
Sure.
And they also don't get that you're going to work. They don't get that you're sitting, for 10 hours a day on a hot set and you still have to go to school, by the way.
Right.
It's not like you get away with not going to school. You still go to school, but you also have to work. And you have to do both in one day. And they don't understand that. So it's very traumatic for a child because they lay into you heavily.
Sure.
You don't have friends. Everybody hates you. And they don't realize they're jealous of you at that age. They just think that you're an ass or whatever, and they don't like you.
Right.
You think you're special, and it's that. When in fact, I was not that guy. I was a very sweet kid. I had good intentions, and I would have loved to have more camaraderie as a kid, but unfortunately, it wasn't there. I did make friends in my neighborhood. I lived in a cul-de-sac when I stayed at my grandmother's, so that's kind of one of the reasons I like going to my grandmother's. Aside from not being abused on a daily basis, that was
she also
perk.
in the Valley?
She was in the Valley, and she was not. She was not in any way abusive. My grandfather was abusive leaning, I guess you would say these days, but. He was, he was raised in the days when everybody beat their kids, and that's just the way it was. So he was beat badly by his father. He beat his children badly.
Right, hurt people.
But when it came time to raise the grandkids, he tried not to do that.
Right.
So there was only one time he was really physical with me. So I did feel that was a bit of a safe haven. Even though he had a tendency to violence, he was able to refrain it. He just yelled a lot and made me think he was going to kill me all the time, but he didn't actually go through with it. Whereas my mom actually would go through with it and had no limit to that. There was no end to it, Right.
It's interesting, and the reason I asked about school and stuff is because, you were part of, obviously you did a lot of acting before things like Stand By Me and Goonies and things like that, but you became part of an aspect of the industry that was all of these young, talented actors, and it was kind of all these different combinations and permutations of actors. We called you the Coreys, it was you and Corey Haim, and it was this group of guys, and you could see all of you in different films. And it was this amazing collection of cinema at that time that you were part of. Did friendships come out of that then that became your peer group? Like, is that sort of where you maybe felt a little camaraderie?
It did, and unfortunately, 90% of them are gone.
Yeah.
Literally, we were talking a little bit about it before we started rolling, but yeah, it's tragic and it's sad because at my age, I should not have so much loss of life. But yet, I feel like I'm a 75-year-old man because literally 70% of my friends are gone. 70% of them are gone.
Yeah, Corey Feldman is definitely an OG. Corey Feldman is a survivor. And in this particular podcast, you all, he talks about his faith, and he talks about how when he was even 14 years old, he knew to pray to God, right? He would pray for protection. He would pray for his dreams. He would pray for, things like that teenagers pray for, He said, but as he got older, he realized how important it was that he prayed for others, that he served for others, and that nowadays he doesn't pray so much for himself, but that he prays for other people, because it's through praying for other people that God covers him. And I knew in that statement that Corey Feldman truly knows God, that he has a relationship with him because of the way he spoke of God. How many of you know when you can tell a lot about people's relationship with God and where they are and the level of relationship that they have because of the connection and their knowledge of him. And I just listened to him speak. I'm going to put the full interview in the description box so that you all can listen to it, because it's well worth your time. We're not going to go through everything because it's pretty long, but I just wanted to introduce you all to Corey Feldman, the latest interviews, for those of you who are not familiar, and for those of you who know who Corey Feldman is, but maybe you didn't know this much about who and what his story is, right? So we're going to listen to a little bit more, and then we'll wrap it up.
Right. Drew, all of us, right?
Yeah.
And so the point being that I was very anti-drug. I was very serious about that. I hated drugs. I saw what they did to my mom. I was never a fan. And then my dad was always smoking weed. So it was like, well, I guess it's okay, because ever since I was 7 years old on the set of Bad News Bears, my dad was smoking weed.
Right.
Every time I'd get in the car, he was with some of the producers smoking weed. So I thought, this is fine. No big deal. Then couple years later, he introduces me to this guy who ends up giving me every drug I ever tried and molesting me. And then Alfie, endorses drugs and molests me and has parties at his house where they're feeding kids drugs and alcohol.
Right.
So that's what you're raised around.
Well, and also I want you to speak a little bit.
It's hard to live life with everybody going, I don't know what he's talking about. Is he even telling the truth?
Right.
All right, guys, that's it for today's podcast or current news, whatever you want to call it. I just wanted to, again, share with you all that this thing is so real. It's realer than most people can ever understand, because we get caught up in our day-to-day lives and we really don't understand what is truly going on. And so I hope that I am bringing more awareness to these crimes against humanity and just opening your eyes to see that the world that we live in, it's spiritual, you all, and it's Ephesians 6. We war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and high places. And we have to understand and know that, right? And we have to be fully booted and prepared in the armor of God to contend in this day-to-day battle. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this content and you like being aware and vigilant, and you just enjoy content that is Christian-based, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and join the community of Pearls of Eden, where day to day, by God's grace, we're dropping pearls, we're dropping wisdom, and that's what pearls represent, wisdom. All right, guys, I love you to life. See you soon.